Hello, dear friends. This is an update I'm making, especially for the Jewish community of Cluj. And I'm here in my home in Jerusalem it was the eighth day of the war of Israel against Hamas and against Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south. And this war has been a watershed moment for the people of Israel. First, I want to say that thank God I'm safe. I'm here in Jerusalem. Jerusalem was targeted on the first day of the war, together with lots of places around the country, but thank goodness nothing fell in Jerusalem. I've always said that Jerusalem is sort of like the eye of the storm. And the eye of the storm is normally calm. And the Yanara, that's what has been here. But just today, there were rocket attacks twice to the Tel Aviv area, once or twice to the Ashkelon area. And of course, most of the time, what we call the envelope around Gaza, the communities around the Gaza Strip, which of course suffered very much on the 7th of October, on that first day, Shmini Atzeret Simchas Torah. What is unique about what happened this time? Because as you know, 2 years ago, the Hamas fired rockets at Israel. And also in 2014, there was an operation against Hamas in Gaza. The reason why things are a little bit different this time is, number one, the atrocities that happened, the massacre that happened on the first day, which, according to Hamas officials, was planned out for 2 years. Not only, of course, Israel seemed to not know about the fact that this plan was going to happen. Our intelligence seemed to have failed us completely on this, which is something which will be investigated after the war. It's also a little bit eerie because this happened 50 years almost to the day of the Yom Kippur War, which also began on its first day with failure of Israeli intelligence. That is also very unusual. But the difference also this time is that Iran is now backing the Hamas in the south, Hezbollah in the north, and these two organizations have become satellites of Iran. So you might say this is a proxy war between Iran and Israel, which makes the situation much more complicated. In my humble opinion, that's also the reason why Hamas was so vicious in its attack so much, where it was actually a massacre, beheading of children, raping of women, people killed and burned and slaughtered. I mean, things that we have not seen in the past here in Israel in such brutality. This is really Iran playing with its marionettes, with its puppets. And that's why it makes the situation much more severe. I think this is also why the United States is right away, the Biden administration, which was critical of this government, is showing full support for the government, has called Hamas ISIS. And we know the position of the United States against ISIS and terrorist organizations the US sent two battleships to be close to Israel. These battleships are aircraft carriers, which is a statement, and have also warned Iran not to be too involved in this war. It's more than just an operation, it is a war. Having said that, I want to talk about the positive sides, the optimistic sides. As you know, Israel called up its reserves, its military reserves, and the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of reserves, not just from Israel. People came from outside of Israel too. From all over the world, Israelis came back. So all the talk that people talked about as if the reserves were critical, this overwhelming support, overwhelming volunteerism, more people came than actually were called up originally by the army. So we have now hundreds of thousands of soldiers, both in the south and in the north, and with high spirits And that's the first point of optimism I want to point out. The second thing is the overwhelming volunteerism of the Israeli population. From day one of the war, people gathered. I saw this in the center of Tel Aviv, people coming, giving donations to soldiers of food, of what they might need, toiletries, anything they might need, sending them off with trucks. It was done through the municipality of Tel Aviv and a whole bunch of private organizations sending food to the troops because there are so many troops and the logistics of getting to all of them is so difficult that the army requested a little bit of help and they were overwhelmed by help. The hospitals asked people to give blood and they were overwhelmed by people standing in line. Giving blood, you had to wait hours to give blood. Wonderful, wonderful things. Just here in my house in Jerusalem, 2 doors away, there's a synagogue which every day is making thousands of sandwiches which are being taken up north to be given out to soldiers, to chayalim in the north. So really a feeling of volunteerism, which we haven't felt for a very long time. And the most important thing, a feeling of unity among the Jewish people. And where the critics have been quiet for the last 8 days, unfortunately, they probably will open their mouths again. But feeling has been very nice of everybody being together and everybody united with a cause. Another interesting thing in development, I would say it's the first time in the 30 years since the Oslo Accords where everybody feels that what happened in Gaza was wrong. As you know, Hamas took over Gaza in 2007. They did win an election, but then they forced the Palestinian Authority out, their opposition, by gunpoint. And since then, they have controlled the Gaza Strip without an election. They basically hold the people of Gaza hostage. People cannot leave. It's very difficult unless they bribe the officials. That's why a lot of the people live in Gaza. If the borders were open, they probably would just leave. So Egypt also keeps its border closed because it doesn't want Palestinians going into its side in the Sinai. So the situation is such, which I think that there's consensus in Israel now that Hamas has to go, that it's just not worth it anymore. If once upon a time in 1993, there were people in Israel who thought, well, if we let Gaza do its own thing and have its own leadership, they'll leave us alone. I think it's clear to everybody now that that is not the case. Not only they will not leave us alone, but their whole plan is to terrorize us and kill us, and the threats are getting worse and worse, and their abilities are getting worse and worse. So Israel's operation, which is happening in Gaza today, has the full support of the people in Israel, and interestingly enough, has the support of the international community. And Joe Biden was very open with this. And Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State of the United States, requested the Egyptians to open the border in the south to allow refugees to go. They allowed some through. And Israel, which now is planning to do a ground operation in northern Gaza, warned the people of Gaza to go south. And even though the Hamas told them not to, 1 million Gazans moved from the north to the south of Gaza, which now gives Israel operating room to do its work against the Hamas and to try to avoid civilians. Because the big difference between us and the Hamas is that Hamas seems only to be interested in terrorizing and killing civilians. Israel is only interested in military targets and in getting the terrorists. That's all we're interested in. We have no interest in hurting any civilian. And when civilians do get hurt, they come to Israeli hospitals too. Sometimes that happens, but it's never on purpose. These are things that have to be said. I myself have been writing an article for the Jerusalem Post, trying to think of what could be the days ahead, what happens when the Gaza operation is over. I have many thoughts about this. If you want, when it gets published, hopefully in a week or two, I can send you a copy of this article. So I want to say that the feeling in Israel is that we will prevail. People are very optimistic. It's been difficult. People are nervous, but the army has really shown um, its strength, its professionalism, and the people part of the army, how everybody has chipped in, is a very strong motivation both for the army and for others. Tourists have left, and I don't blame them for that. I understand that. But most Israelis have stayed. And this is our home. I've had relatives say to me, "Why did you go visit us in Canada and the United States?" I explained to them, "This is my home. And by being here, I show my support that I believe in the land of Israel, that I believe that the IDF will prevail." And so it's important for us to be here. School was closed for about the first week. This week, I wasn't paying attention what was happening. The university where I teach is only starting on the 5th of November. And many shops in cities like Tel Aviv, where there still are missiles, have been closed. Many of the shops in Jerusalem, a lot of the shops are already open. It depends. Of course, all of these supermarkets are open and pharmacies and things which are very necessary, they're all open. There are no food shortages in Israel. I want to point that out. So life does continue here. How long will this go on is a hard thing to know. If it remains the Hamas and the Hezbollah, Hamas will take time, but Israel already will be able to curtail probably the missiles within a week or two. But the operation could take time because Israel wants to be careful. It wants to do it properly. The question whether will, of course, will always be how long the international community will hold back from its criticism. But I'm just saying Israel wants to do this correctly, and it's probably the right thing to do. In the north, the Hezbollah have also been making attempts to cross the border and sending rockets. However, they have been doing it in a minimal way, which looks like they're just trying to show their support for Hamas. Iran did threaten Israel not to enter Gaza, but the United States also told Iran to back down. So it's a little hard to see what's going to go on here. My personal feeling is that Iran will back down at this point, because at this point it has a lot to lose. And it's true that it doesn't want to lose its foothold in Gaza, but I think it has a lot to lose if it gets too involved here, especially since the United States is very much against that. That's my update for the moment. So my most important thing to say is that the feeling, the spirit of the people are very strong here in Israel. And we thank all our friends from around the world who are calling, who are asking how we are. Everybody, that's a wonderful thing. I have relatives and friends in Romania who have written me and also asked how things are going. And I thank them very much for that. And I wish everybody good health, happiness, and peace in Israel. Hello.